So as you saw in the video, it's very beneficial to you to set the option explicit at the beginning of the module. If you don't want to keep doing that on every single module, you just really want to have the option explicit. Every single time you create a brand new module, it's so simple to go to the Access, on the Tools, select Option, and basically part of the option, you can set that general declaration to be set for you. So you can go to the module, select Tools, Option, and then choose Required Variable Declaration, just in case if you wanted to have the general declaration to have option explicit every single time that you're adding a new module. Right now, if I add a new module in here by selecting modules and select insert, automatically has option explicit. Also, you could assign a particular value to a variable type as type of date. If you want to declare a date, don't forget to enclose that using the pound keyword. Otherwise, it takes it as a text. If you want to make sure that the value would be presented as a date, you have to include that particular value surrounded by the pound. So basically, if you wanted to identify a string, you have to use quotation mark. Date, you have to specify the pound. Number basically is a number, and Boolean would be true or false. As you saw in the video and also my previous demonstration, we have demonstrated the usage of a message box and input box. Let's get into the detail of a message box. By the time we go back to the editor itself, on the message box alone, if I put a parenthesis, automatically the parameter info pops up. And as you see here, the first parameter that you have to pass in is a prompt. The prompt could be any string value. For example, here I can say the value of my variable is equal to, and then quotation mark, and then comma. As you see, basically, the prompt could be any specific text or any specific string. Pay attention to the parameter info tooltip. The prompt is bold. That means that's where I am right now. After the comma, it says how many buttons would you like to have. As you see, the number of buttons are available in here. By default, message box gives you one single button. Sometimes you want to ask questions. In other words, message box could act like a sub-procedure, and also it could act like a function. It could return a value back to you, which later on in other modules of this course, I show you how to really make a decision using the message box. Message box could prompt and say, what do you want to do with this? Yes, no, abort, retry, okay, ignore. Many different conditions you could set. And based on the result that the user press, you could make a decision. I'll show you how to do that later on. But for now, you could basically go and specify basically VB okay only. Means I just want to get one okay. Or VB okay cancel. Or VB yes no. Or VB, for example, retry cancel. Many different combinations of these buttons are available. Remember that this is the message box style. And by default, they give you VB OK alone. Remember that you can also put a plus sign and again combine that with another style. Let's say you want to also set the icon for your message box. You want to put a critical or question mark or anything like that. You could actually combine the button style with the graphical style. Let's take a look at this demo for a second. I combine the VB critical with OK. And then also I can put a title for my message box. I can say Apex Infotech as the title. And then, of course, if there's any help file associated with it, which we don't have any, just in case the help file will give you a help button, so they can click on a help button, and that could refer to a HTML or could be referring to a CHM file and so forth. And then finally, if you have a help file, what context of that help file would you like to show? Because the help file might have many different contexts. The concept of a help file and context itself are outside of the scope of this class. So I'm just going to stop right now, and basically this is my VB itself. This is my message box. Now remember that part of the prompt itself, if you lost that tooltip, you can always right click in here and basically go down and choose the parameter info from the view itself. Sometimes it's not being shown. If it's not being shown, that's fine. You can basically go down and basically the reason that right now is giving me the error message is because you can't put parentheses in here. Now, in order to get the parameter info, you can actually click anywhere and press a space, and that automatically gives you the parameter info. Right now, I'd like to show you the concatenation. By pressing Shift 7 or ampersand, I concatenate my prompt with the actual variable. So what I'm doing, I like to show how to concatenate the prompt with the actual value. So this means go ahead and combine this value of this variable with this text right down in here. Let's go run this for a second. And as you see, it says the value of my variable is 2. Take a look at this red icon. That's critical error. And I have OK. Let's go change that for a second. And instead of having VB OK, now I like to have like VB, let's say OK cancel. And instead of having VB critical, I like to ask, for example, VB exclamation, or exclamation would do. Let's go run that. As you see, the icon has changed. So you can combine the style of the keys or buttons as well as the style of the icon on your message box. You can also go back in here to your course and see the available button styles that are available in here. Remember that since the message box can retrieve a specific value, based on that, you could retrieve the value into a variable and hold it as a value. So let's go back in here. I like to declare a private variable in here, and I call it integer response as integer, for example. And I like to store the information into the integer response and show that, you see, by the way, as soon as you are placing the message box the other side of the equal sign, then you have to enclose that within the question mark. That's the rule within VBA. That means if you are going to pass the value of the message box, all the other parameters have to be enclosed within the parentheses. If you are not going to do that, you don't have to put the parentheses in. So right now, I am storing the value of the message box into the integer response, and then I use the message box, another message box, the simple one, in order to actually show the integer response here for me. So let's go run that. As you see right now, I say the value of my variable is 2. By clicking OK or cancel, I get a different value, and another message box shows that. If I click OK, the value is 1. If I run this again, and if I click cancel, the value is 2. So as you realize, based on this value, I can do something. So here, I like to go and comment this line. As you see, by pressing a single code in front of a line, I comment that line. That means I'm not going to execute that line. And I like to go ahead and show you a conditional statement very quick. I can use select cases statement in here. I can say select, for example, integer response, and basically based on this specific case, I can say and select, and based on case 1 or case 2, do something differently. I can actually say message box and I can say you have answered OK, and then copy paste this line right down in here and say you have answered, like for example, cancel. So let's go do that. Run this again. Click my value of my variable is 2. OK. If I click cancel, it says you have answered cancel. If I run this again, it says you have answered OK. So based on that, you can make a decision. Just consider this fact that by the time you're closing a form, you might want to ask the user, are you sure you want to close this form? If they say yes, you say, OK, close it. If they say no, you say, you know what, forget about it. Don't close it. You can do many different things. Or by the time someone wants to save a record into a database, are you sure? Then you can say yes or no. Or retry, cancel, abort. Just wanted to demonstrate the power of a message box. And basically the message box itself could make determination in your application. Another function that you saw in the video was input box. Input box is very similar to the message box with one major difference. It will ask you to enter a value, and all the time will retrieve one single type, which is a text type. So if you want to retrieve a numerical value, you have to convert it yourself. So you have to basically get that string value and convert it by using conversion utilities like cdouble, cint, or whatever. So in this scenario, as you see, you have to have a return value, and the input box alone, it will prompt you and ask for a value. So let's go ahead and do that within our sample code in here. Within the second procedure, what I like to have now, I like to go and declare a variable. For example, I say integer my answer as type integer, and then basically, you see, intentionally I'm declaring an integer variable, but I like to use the particular input box for it. So I go with integer my answer. I can basically say is equal to input box, and input box, you see, is the other side of the equal sign. I have to use the parentheses for it. Input box, I use the prompt. I say, how old are you? And basically, based on that question, I can specify the title. I say age verification. And you can specify the position for it and so forth. You could also specify a default value for it if you will. But right now, I'm just happy with these two. I just say, how old are you? And then store the information on the integer case. I'm just copying and pasting the select cases statement. And this time, instead of having integer response, of course, I'm using integer answer. And based on a specific value, if I say if the case, for example, if is, now I like to use conditional statement. If I say if is, for example, less than 18, you see, I'm checking the value. If it's less than 18, I say you are minor. And if I say case greater than 18 or equal to 18, basically, I say you are an adult. So let's go test that. It says, how old are you? I say, for example, 17. And it would message me that you are a minor. If I go ahead and run this again, if I say I'm 32, for example, it says you are an adult. So basically, using this code, you realize how to combine conditional statement, how to combine logical statement, how to combine input box, message box. So with this few minutes presentation, you saw that you're getting into a very powerful application design. You can actually combine this with your forms and come up with a very nice design within your application. So the variable lifetime is only valid throughout the scope of the variable itself. In this example, the variable lifetime of integer my answer or integer response is only valid throughout the execution of this procedure. But the variable lifetime for the actual value that has been designed within the module is the module scope. So it depends how long you want to go and keep the variable is important to specify the scope for it. I've already shown you many different expressions in here. You have arithmetic expressions that you can add, subtract, multiply, or divide numbers, or even use the mod, which is only showing the remainder of that particular operation. In this scenario, 10 mod 3, the remainder would be 1, obviously, because 10 divided by 3, basically you get what? You get 3 times 3, 9. The remainder is what? 1. So mod will retrieve the remainder of any operations in here for you. Basically, the order precedence is important. The parentheses comes first, and then you get the multiply or divide, and then after that you get the addition or subtraction. In this scenario, I've already shown you how to do the concatenation. I'm showing it to you again. You're concatenating two different variables with a space between. We have already demonstrated many of these things. Also the assignment. As you see, you can assign a value into a variable by using the equal sign. So you are setting the value of this variable to be equal to true, and so forth. I have already shown you how to assign a value of a variable to be coming out of an input box. Also, I have shown you how to do the comparison expressions. Less than, greater than, equal to, not equal to, less than or equal, and greater than or equal has been already demonstrated here for you. And also, you could have logical comparison expression, like you could negate a value. You could say if it's not this, or if it is this. You could AND them, you could OR them. AND means both conditions have to be true, OR means one of the conditions needs to be true. So basically, you could combine all that information. There's another practice in which you can basically go through them in your spare time. The last section of this particular module talks about code enhancement as well as the conditional statements. So basically the code enhancement is try to do indentation, try to add enough commenting. Don't try to comment to say, oh, this is a message box. Well, the user knows that what you're using. But you have to basically put the reason of why you're doing that as a comment. Not necessarily, oh, okay, this is a message box, or I'm adding 2 numbers over here. Like if you're putting 2 plus 2, or in this scenario, if I wanted to put a comment in here, I say that, oh, I check, for example, the integer response value. This is not a very good commenting technology in here. Why? Because I can't see that if I'm a programmer. Why do you want to do that? On the comment, I have to specify the reason for it. I want to say determine the value of the message box. This is a better commenting. So the user knows why you're doing it. By the time you're doing an action, it's not a bad idea to say why you're doing it, rather than exactly explain what are you doing. So commenting are very important here. Also line continuation. Don't try to run a very long line. Try to break it down into smaller chunks. In this scenario, this is a string full name. As you see, you're putting a prefix, first name, middle name, last name, and so forth. If I want to put them all in one line, it would be difficult to read. So you can break the line by using the underline. As you see, the underline itself can break the line into different sections. Let's take a look at it. This is a long running code, as you see. I have to scroll in order to see the whole thing. You see that? I can actually break this line by basically putting the underscore, go to the next line. And also I can break it down as many times as I want to. I can prove to you that this is one single line of code by trying to put a breakpoint. I'm just jumping a little bit to chapter 5 that talks about debugging. And as you see, by clicking once, you get 3 lines that are acting like one line anyways. That's a logical line, one line, but I'm breaking down into 3 physical lines because I can read it better. So line continuation is actually an underscore. But don't forget that you need to concatenate accordingly. If you don't concatenate it using the ampersand, it might fail on you. So you have to make sure that you combine continuation and concatenation accordingly. In this scenario, as you see, they are using the concatenation character and continuation character with a space together. The last section talks about controlling the program flow. I've already shown you some of the logical statement for the select case. Now let's take a look at this animation that talks about if, then else, if, then else, if, and finally select case. Please spend some time and take a look at this animation on this section of the CD.